Hello everyone! Today we're going to be making a website from scratch and then we're going to be implementing some really cool fun animations with it. So let me show you what we'll be making today. So this is the website that we'll be making. So this is going to be a two-part series, and in the first video, which is this one, we're going to be making this website from scratch using just HTML and CSS and minus the animations. And in the second video, it's going to be fully dedicated to just creating the snowfall animation that you see happening here. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned because we'll be coding this soon. One thing I want to say before we start is that if you want to follow along, I will be linking up the images in the description below so you can download it from there. And another thing is that I will also be linking up the project's GitHub in the description so you can download that file and you can mess around with it if you'd like. So anyways, let's get started. So for this project, what we need is to create an index.html file. And then we also need a style sheet, so a styles.css. And then we also need a JavaScript file to automate the snowfall, so app.js. So now let's go to the index.html, and if we press exclamation and tab, it's going to generate the boilerplate code for you. And let's also change this document to Wanderer. And the next thing we want to do is import the Google font, so let me quickly do that. So if I go to Google Fonts, the font that I really like is called Cookie. So I'm going to use this for like headings and stuff. And if we quickly go to pairings, and then I want to choose this one and then add more styles, and I really wanted the light 300 for certain places. So now let's just copy up this link, and then let's paste that in here. The next thing we need to do is link up the CSS style sheet. So link and then styles.css. And finally, what we need to do is link up the JavaScript file, so source script and then source and then app.js. And this is the boilerplate HTML that we need for starting this. Now, one thing I want to mention before we start off is inside the body structure, inside the body tags, I like to structure my code with a header, main, and then footer sections. So if you look at our particular website, it only has a header and a main section and no footer. So let's go ahead and create those sections right now. So a header section, and then we also need a main section. And now inside the header section, we have a nav bar sort of thing. So I'm just going to section it off with a nav bar, and then in the right we have a logo, so I mean the left, so let's type that logo and then Wanderer, and then let's add an unlisted thing, and then like if we and then generate two lists. And then now what we need to do is type in about in the first one and then book now. And that's all we need for the header. The next thing we need to do is get inside the main and then add the code we need in here. So if you look at the website, there's two sections to it in the main section. So there's the text area and then the image area. So let's go ahead in here and then create two separate div tags for those two areas. So I'm going to call this one Wanderer text, and then I'm going to call the other one Wanderer image. So like Wanderer image. And there we go. So inside the Wanderer image, all we have is the image. So I'm going to link that up here right now. So image source, and then let's go inside images and then add the trees. Inside here, we can call it forest trees background. Okay, and now up here in the text, what we need to do is create an h1 tag and then type in Wanderer. And then the next thing we need to do is create an h2 tag and type be adventurous. And then the next thing we need to do is create a p tag and then generate lorem 25. And then the final thing that we need to do is add a button. So button, and we will also be needing another button in here, and then we can call this book now. So this is all the HTML file structure we need to create this. And now what we need to do is go ahead and style this up. So let me get inside the styles.css. So actually, let me just open this up in live server first. So this is what the page looks like. So let's go inside this, and the first thing we need to do is get rid of the browser's inbuilt margin and padding. So if you look here before the image, there's like this really small padding or like margin that's going on, which is an inbuilt thing from the browser. So what we can do is set the margin to 0 as well as the padding to 0. Next thing we want to do is to set the box sizing to border box, so that if you have like if you have a box with certain dimensions or a div tag with certain dimensions, adding a padding won't change its dimensions. That's what box sizing border box does. So we need that in here. So next thing we can do is start styling up the header tag. So for the header tag, let's set the width to 100%. The next thing we can do is set the height to maybe 5 rem, or maybe let me maybe just make it into pixels, so like 60 pixels maybe. And then the next thing we can do is set the display to, actually no, we don't need any display flex, so let's just leave the header at that. Now let's start styling up the nav. So in here, let me get the nav, and what we need to do is set the nav to display and flex, and then flex direction of row. And then the next thing we need is to align items center, and then the final thing we need to do is justify content space between, so space between. And another thing we would need is to set the height in here again, so that we can actually get align items to center things. So let's add the height in here, and then if I look over here, it's spaced around like that. Next thing we want to do is set this width to 85%, and then set the margin to top, bottom 0 and right, left auto. What this does is it basically aligns items like this and leaves an even spacing on the right and left. So that's the effect that these two lines properties create. So the next thing we want to do is style up the UL. So nav UL, and then we can set the display to flex again. Flexbox is really important. I use it for everything. So if you don't know, I'll also add a link to a really helpful website in the description. So display flex and flex direction row. And there we go. We also need to get rid of the bullet point in there. So to do that, we can set the list style to none. And now what we can do is get up here, and most of the page uses this railway font family, so I'm gonna paste that up there. And the next thing we need to do after pasting that is, most of the page has the same blue color, which I actually have written down here. So the blue color is 005C94 in hex code. All right, so let me save that and get back in here, and there we go. Everything has this right font family and it's in blue color. Next thing we want to do is add a space between about and book. So if you see, they're all crunched up in here, so let's give them a bit of a padding. So let's give it a 0.25, no, 0.5 rem would do. Yeah, there we go. That looks fine. Now what we can do is increase the font size inside this whole thing because it looks really small. So let's make it 1.5 rem. And I think that looks fine. So let's give the cookie font family to these two things, the logo and the H1. So I'm going to copy font family cookie. And let's get in here, target the logo and also target the H1 and give it this font family, and also say font size to be 3 rem. And if we get back in here, there we go. The header is almost done. One thing we're missing is setting a border bottom, box shadow I mean, to the header. So box shadow, and we want the X displacement to be 0 and Y to be 4 pixels, and like the blur to be 20 and the color to be black with an with the A value set to 0.25. There we go. I think I want to increase the height a bit more. So if we maybe made it to 100 maybe, and see what that looks like. And I think that, okay, maybe that might be too big. So let's just make it 80, and I think that'll be fine. And there we go. I think I really like 80. So now what we need to do is style up the main tag. So like I said before, for the main tag, you have two sections. You have the text area, and then we have the image area. So to make them be displayed like side by side, we can use the display flex property again. It's a really useful property. I highly recommend learning that property, especially if you're a beginner at web development. So let's set the flex direction to row, and if we look at it, it's already aligned perfectly. So now the next thing we need to do is align this text area in the center of the page. So to do that, let's target the wanderer text, And what we can do is set the display to flex, and then flex direction to column this time because everything has to be aligned below each other. And then if we set the justify content to center, it will align things at the center of the page. There we go. And that's most of the stylings. Now what we need to do is select the H2 tag and give it a color of black. So 000. And then the next thing we need is to set its font weight to 300. And give it a bit of padding, so top down 1 rem, right left 0. So there we go. We need to also give a padding to this entire area, which is the wanderer text area. So I'm just going to give it a padding of maybe 6 rem. And I think that looks fine. You could also, to center it, do the same trick that we used up here, which is the width 85%, margin auto. So the next thing we need to do is I specifically like my paragraphs to have the text align property set to justify. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now let's start styling up the button, which is this book thing in there. So if we can type button and set the text align to center, and there we go. The next thing we can do is .btn, and we can give it a width of maybe 60 pixels. Let me also set the display to flex and align items center and justify content center. And there we go, it's at the center. Now what we can do is give this part a background color of the blue that we're using, so it looks like that right now. So if you give it a padding 1 rem, and so there we go. So let's also get rid of the blue text color in here, so we can set the color to white. So there we go. Now what we need to do is the issue is since we set the box sizing to border box, it's not like using the padding as it's supposed to. So if we set the box sizing to content box, that's going to fix the problem for us. This is because we set box sizing to border box up there. Most of the time box sizing border box is like really useful. In here it sort of hinders our output, so we set it back to content box. So what we can do now is give it a border radius, and I think maybe of 3 rem, or is that too big? That is a bit big, so let's make it 2.5 rem. And let's also change the padding up a bit. Let's maybe make it 0.5 and in the top down, and 1 rem right left. And I think that looks fine. Let's also give this a bit of a margin so it's separated from the text above. So margin, top down 1 rem, right left 0, and there we go. So one final thing that we need to do before finishing off this page is underline the about area. So to do that, let's get in here and give the header a class of inside li. If we give it a class of selected, and inside the CSS style sheet page, we can style it up. So let me find li. Okay, down here, selected, can say border bottom. There we go. Solid 3 pixels, and give it the blue color that we're looking for. And there we go. Alright, so we created a simple website from scratch using just HTML and CSS. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and in the next video what we'll be doing is creating the snowfall animation using JavaScript and a bit of CSS. And I'll be releasing the video soon, like in a couple of days, and stay tuned then, and see you guys next time. Bye!